Hello, and welcome to Book Circle. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we will continue our reading of The Demon Priest by Jim Burrows. We left off right in the middle of a very pitched fight, and then the narrator said, "And that's when you showed up." Now we get to find out who she was addressing. Retrospective 8, Revelation. Barbara Lockwood stormed up to the reception desk at St. Anthony in the Pines Care Center and demanded, "What is this nonsense about my father, Right Reverend William Whitcomb, leaving this place?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Lockwood," said the shaken young woman behind the desk, "but Miss Lockwood, Miss Arabella Lockwood, your daughter, I believe, picked him up about 15 minutes ago." "What are you talking about, young lady? My father is not a well man. He cannot be allowed to just wander off." "He didn't wander, ma'am. He waited right here." The receptionist gestured to a little circle of couches and comfortable chairs, "for about half an hour, saying that someone was coming to pick him up. Miss Lockwood arrived about 20 minutes ago." She turned the reception log around and pushed it to where the agitated older woman could see it, "helped him gather his things." "Gather his things? Things? What things?" "He had a small overnight bag, an overcoat, and his hat." "And you let him leave?" "Yes, ma'am. Miss Lockwood arrived just as he said and picked him up. They signed the book." She tapped the logbook gingerly as if afraid it might suddenly snap shut on her fingers. "The man is not well. He's delusional. You cannot just let him wander off willy-nilly." "I'm sorry, ma'am. The bishop is a voluntary resident here. We have no right to restrain him. There is a note that you should be notified if there is any change in his condition or if he leaves the facility. I did call." Her voice trembled as she said, "I left voicemail." "Voicemail? Voicemail of all things! My father is who knows where, and you left me voicemail?" "Your daughter, ma'am." "My daughter what?" "Your daughter knows where." "Who knows where?" "Your daughter knows where." "Well, I never!" Arabella Lockwood tapped a button on her steering wheel to answer the incoming cell phone call. "Arabella Willett Lockwood, just what do you think you are doing?" boomed her mother's voice from the car speakers. "Lovely to hear from you too, Mother," she replied as she turned down the volume. "Don't get cute with me, young lady." "I taught you better manners, Barbie," said William. He reached out and pressed the red End Call button on the screen in the middle of the dashboard. "Poppy, you didn't." "Hang up on your mother? Of course I did. There's never been any use in trying to reason with her when she throws a tantrum, not since her very first one all those years ago. She was a difficult child even then." The sound of a phone ringing surrounded them, and the word "Mom" appeared on the screen along with a green accept and a red decline button. William pressed accept. "Have you calmed down, Barbie?" he asked. "Have I?" she spluttered. He hung up. Arabella bit her tongue. The phone rang once again. "Barbie?" he answered patiently. "Hello, Father." He waited in silence. The sound of a dramatic sigh came out of the speakers. "How are you, Father?" "Very good, Barbie. I'm fine. And you?" "Worried." "I'm sorry to hear that. What do you expect?" "I'm sorry, Barbie. Whose phone did you call?" he asked, his forefinger hovering over the End Call button. "Whose phone? She paused dramatically and then continued, "Very well. Hello, Bella." "Hello, Mother." "How are you, dear?" "Good. Really good." "I see. Well, good. And what are you up to?" "Oh, Poppy called and asked me for a ride. We're headed to New Acadia." "And where exactly are you two off to?" asked Barbara. "I'm glad you asked," replied William. "Really?" "Of course, Barbie. He's returned. Uncle Samuel. Some time ago, and no one told me. I saw him on the news, and so I'm going to see him. He's reopened St. Michael's, by the way." Oh, please, that monster on the TV? He's just some meta with a sense of the dramatic and a cruel sense of humor. You can't seriously... I most certainly can. I saw him. They rolled some file footage, captured his face quite clearly, and showed him transforming. He is just as I have said. The man helped raise me. You think I wouldn't recognize him? The man? To hear the two of you tell it, he only pretends to be a man. He's a demon, or worse. You're spluttering again, Barbie. Perhaps we should talk later. Have a good day. Once more he hit the end call button. Oh, Poppy. Oh, Bella. He smiled brightly at her. The phone rang, announcing Mom. He hit decline. They repeated this 2 more times before Barbara gave up. There, he said. Now we can enjoy the ride. Is he really a demon, Poppy? Uncle Samuel? I suppose. I prefer fallen angel. Technically, he's a Grigori, a watcher. And he's a redeemed fallen angel. He repented and confessed. My grandfather absolved, baptized, and eventually ordained him a century ago. Demon seems a little hurtful. But they're calling him the demon priest on the news. I suppose they are, but people call others all sorts of things. It's not always true, nor the whole truth. I guess not. After all, they call me crazy, senile, and demented, all because I talked about him and his ilk. And that after the demon wars spilled out into the world. Heavens, just talking about this world as if there were other realities, other realms, didn't sit well with them. Where did they think the Demon King and the Dark Prince and all their minions came from? A lot of people don't think they're real demons, Poppy, just some sort of meta shapeshifters or something. I know, dear, I know. But the church... He closed his eyes, and when Arabella stole a look at him, she could see a tear making its way down his cheek. It'll be okay, Poppy. New Acadia's a couple of hours away. Why don't you push the seat back and get some rest? After a while, Arabella turned on the radio. The music kept her company while her grandfather slept. As the St. John Bridge into New Acadia came into sight, a voice broke in on the radio. We interrupt our programming to bring you this bulletin. A metahuman battle has broken out in the area between St. Michael's Church and the Lyonnais. Residents of the Mission Hill district are advised to stay indoors, and everyone should avoid traveling into the area unnecessarily. Falcon and NAPD are on the scene, as is our reporter Renee Austin. Renee, what can you tell us about the incident? Metahuman conflict grew out of a protest this afternoon at St. Michael's. The former church has been the headquarters recently of a metahuman vigilante known as Father Samuel Gregory, or the Demon Priest. As you know, Jeremy, Father Gregory has been a controversial figure since his recent arrival in New Acadia and his purchase of the former church. Yes, Renee. News got out recently that the Demon Priest was planning to reopen St. Michael's as some sort of non-denominational church. This led to rumors that it would be a satanic church, culminating in today's protest. True Blues sidekick Sir Richard the True Knight showed up to try to keep the peace, as did NAPD. Inside, the priest was meeting with members of his potential congregation, including members of the Outcast Street Gang, many of whom are known to be metas. A few minutes ago, violence broke out. It's not exactly clear what happened. A group wearing jackets and T-shirts with a demon head image on them seemed to have been involved in some of the initial scuffles, as were Outcast gang members. The True Knight tried to break up the fight, which escalated and... Hold on, Jeremy. Lionheart himself has just landed. William turned off the radio. We need to get there, Bella. To St. Michael's? But the police will have the whole area blocked off. I know, but they won't have thought of everything. Turn here. Take the tunnel. The tunnel? Yes. Okay, she said, cutting across the right lane just in time to make the tunnel exit. All right now, after the Washington Street exit, there will be another right, unmarked. Take it. The one that truck went down? That's it. Keep to the right and slow down. Where are we? Turn right here, the one labeled JMF Deliveries, was all he said. Once they'd made the turn, he continued. Access tunnels for trucks make deliveries to J.M. Fordham and the other department stores. You should be able to make your way to the parking garage under the Brown Building. That's only a couple of blocks from St. Michael's. How do you know this? My years as a stock boy in the 50s. and I may have used it a few times since to avoid traffic. Turn here. And the signs reading authorized traffic only? I always felt my driver's license authorized me to be in traffic. Oh, Poppy, don't blame me. I'm just a delusional old man. Yeah, right. Once they had parked the car under the Brown Building and were taking the elevator up, Arabella asked her grandfather, "How did I not know about the tunnels under the city?" Because very few people really know about them. If a lot of people did, they'd get as crowded as the streets above. The truckers wouldn't be able to get through, and it'd be pretty dangerous with thousands of cars belching fumes into the tunnels. It's to everyone's advantage to keep them quiet. They run several stories down into the bedrock, which means that they're below sea level and virtually impossible to expand these days. And people would do things like end run the police blockade around Mission Hill, putting themselves in danger during a meta battle. Yes, you wouldn't want people doing that, not unnecessarily at least, agreed Whim. They got off at the garage level, entered the subway station, walked through it, and exited to the street little more than a block away from St. Michael's. Bishop Whitcomb strode purposefully toward the church. Don't dawdle, Bella. I'm right with you, Poppy. Your stay at St. Anthony's doesn't seem to have slowed your pace any. I may be crazy, but I still know the importance of getting my exercise. I am the fellow who walked to the edge of hell and back, after all. Glancing up at the circling helicopters in the sky ahead of them, she replied, You know it gets easier to believe that story by the minute. They had to slow their pace as St. Michael's came into view. All the foot traffic was headed toward them and away from the church. When they got to the end of the block, a policeman stepped into their path. He was about to say something. William spoke first. Thank you, officer, but I have business at St. Michael's. The policeman ran his gaze up and down William, taking in the purple shirt with the clerical collar. Are you sure, sir? Absolutely, replied the bishop. Do you need me to accompany you? No, but thank you. I think these people here need you more. The officer nodded and returned his attention to the outbound traffic. You are sure, Poppy? Asked Arabella when they had crossed the street. I think I must be, but you needn't. To hell with that, she replied. You're not the only one allowed to be crazy in this family. You always say such sweet things. Now, let's cross the parking lot to the cloister and go in one of the back doors, the vestry maybe, or the chapel. You're familiar with the church? I was the assistant pastor at St. Mike's for a couple of years, around the time your mother was born, he explained as they stepped up onto the porch. He glanced at the door to his right, but passed it and stopped before the one straight ahead. Chapel is through here and is open to the nave. We won't be able to see all the way to the vestibule without crossing the chapel. Are you ready, Arabella? Yes, sir. He grasped the handle and opened the door. The chapel was crowded with people, all facing away from him. He looked back over his shoulder and after a pause said, Get these good people into the parish house, Bella, if they don't want to leave the area. It's the door to the right, just before the stairs. He gestured toward the colonnade behind her. But, she began, but stopped after one glance at the look in his eye. Laying a hand gently on the shoulder of the woman before him, This way, my children, he said in his best pastoral voice. Once they were all headed down the cloister to the parish house, William made his way out into the nave, and from there to the main vestibule, where a young woman was just leaving the church, with an elderly gentleman fretting at the door behind her. Looking out the door, William caught sight of the young woman ducking and dodging as she made her way across the chaos on the lawn, where at least a dozen metahumans were engaged in battle. More than half of them wore black shirts emblazoned with the red head of a horned devil. Most of the rest wore T-shirts bearing the image of a human skull. In the midst of all this, the demon priest, Father Gregory, was fending off blows from both Richard the True Knight and a massive fellow who appeared to be an animated granite statue wearing a devil-head shirt while trying to reason with both. He dodged, wove, and sidestepped, occasionally deflecting the fist of one or another of his assailants, who managed to land blows on each other, but never on him. Seeing that the priest seemed to be holding his own, William turned his attention to the young woman he'd seen leave the church. She'd managed to make her way through the combatants to where the police were holding a number of onlookers back. There she accosted a tall, handsome blond man in slacks and a blue shirt. She was yelling something at him, but the only words that William could make out sounded something like Dr. Apollo. The man shoved her roughly away as one of the policemen turned from facing the crowd to see what the commotion was. The woman staggered back, but pressed on, closing on the blond man. He shoved her with both hands, forcing her back toward the lawn. She grabbed his arms and pulled him with her. The policeman moved to break them up, but staggered back as one or both of them shoved him aside. William couldn't see which. He started down the church steps toward them. The woman grabbed the man by the collar, her arms making it hard for him to hit her. Both were yelling. William made his way past a pair of grappling combatants crackling with electricity. He could smell ozone as he passed. As William approached the struggling man and woman, something strange happened, almost as if his vision doubled. While she shook him by his shirt front and he struck at her and tried to free himself from her grasp, it was as if she had a second pair of bared, glowing red arms and was lifting a similarly glowing blue version of him up out of his clothes. "Can end you!" William heard her yell. Suddenly the glowing figures tore loose from their fleshly counterparts. The red, armor-clad demon woman twisted, throwing the naked golden man, crackling in a nimbus of blue fire, back and into the air. Rather than fall to earth, he staggered until he found his footing in midair and turned back to face her. There he stood in the air, about halfway between William and the demonic warrior woman, his back to the bishop. William and the demoness caught each other's eyes. "You!" she cried, and before she'd even finished the word, he called out, "Lalela!" Behind her, the mortal man and woman seemed staggered for a moment, loosening their grip on each other, but then resumed their harangues. Lalela tore her gaze from William and leapt into the air, bat-like wings spread, drawing the flaming sword from its scabbard. Behind her, the woman swooned in the blond man's grasp as two policemen arrived, one grabbing him, the other catching her. The golden man reached as if to pull a sword from a scabbard at his hip, and by the time his hand got there, a sword, scabbard belt, and short chiton had appeared on him. He drew the sword just barely in time to parry hers. The flame from her blade scorched the fabric of his chiton. The blond man was struggling with one policeman while the other laid the young lady gently on the lawn, then turned to assist his colleague. William rushed to the fallen woman. She tried to sit up, but swooned again. William dropped to his knees and caught her. As he cradled her head and shoulders, her eyes fluttered open. "It's been a while, human. You've aged," she said. Then, blinking her eyes, she continued, Who are you?" Her eyes closed, and she went limp in his arms. "She needs medical assistance," William told the policeman. "She needs to be arrested," sneered the blond man. "She assaulted me." "You need to stop struggling," replied the policeman. Overhead, the demon version of the one and the Greek god version of the other clashed swords. A woman in the brown sports coat of a Falcon agent strode over. "Get her some help," she said to one of the policemen, "and keep him restrained," she told the other. "Who is he?" The blond man started to reply. "She," the policeman replied, "called him Dr. Apollo." The Falcon agent looked from the blond man up to the demigod version of him battling the demon in the air, and nodded. "Cuff him, and see that he gets to either Detective Inspector McGarry at the 1-on-1 or to Falcon HQ, held for me, Agent Jardin. Tell them we may have the plague doctor." "Yes, ma'am." "So, how are you involved, Bishop?" "I just arrived, Agent Jardin. She seems to be in trouble." "You with Father Gregory?" "He's an old family friend." "What's with them?" She gestured with her head toward the demon and demigod fighting above them. "They, manifested out of the young lady here and the doctor. The gold fellow I don't know, but I've met her before. She's a fallen angel called Lalela. I last saw her guarding the bound Grigory, the fallen angels to whom Father Samuel ministered." "You saw her guarding them?" Where? It's hard to say. Think of it as the outskirts of hell. It's not around here. Sometimes I doubt that. She paused and turned. Officers, get these looky-loos back. No one belongs within a block of here. Yes, ma'am, said several of them. One muttered, not like we ain't been trying that. The police urged the people back, but given their numbers, were only marginally successful. Any idea how Lee is? Is that her name? William looked down at the unconscious woman in his arms, then back up at Agent Jardin. Lee? Yes, I know her. She's the father's sidekick or assistant. She lives in the parish house, at least part-time. William brushed a few strands of hair out of Lee's face. If I have to guess, she's just in shock. But I've no idea what her relationship is to Leila. The Apollonian demigod crashed into the ground, shaking it. Or what the impact of suddenly being separated from her is. Perhaps Leila dropped out of the sky onto the fallen figure, driving the flaming sword at his chest. He only barely managed to fend off the blow with the flat of his blade. Her second thrust probably would have struck home if Lionheart hadn't tackled her. We ought to get her out of the immediate vicinity, but not too far. No idea what separating them will do, William told the agent. Meddlesome fool! Bellowed Leila, and backhanded Lionheart with the flat of her flaming blade, hurtling him into the air to smash into the third floor of the brownstone across the street. That gave the demigod enough of an opening to slash her in the side with his sword. Flame gouted out where the blade cut into her breastplate. She screamed, then slammed her pommel into the side of his head. Agent Jardin helped the bishop to his feet, and they hustled Lee to shelter within the church. Arabella was waiting in the vestibule. You know, Poppy, they may just be right. You may actually be nuts. Love you too, Bella. So, the fight's over? The fight's interrupted? The fight's just beginning? We'll find out next time.